This week we're going to be talking about plots. Plot, the narrative structure of your story. Now, what we're going to be talking about is A plot, B plot, and C plot. A plot is the structure of your story, the series of events, the hobbits taking the ring to Mordor and throwing it into Mount Doom, Harry Potter defeating the evil wizard, or anybody defeating the Dark Lord. Essentially, characters need to get from point A to point B. The journey that they make throughout that, all the actions, reactions, all of the conflict that comes along with that, that's your A plot. B plot is the relationship plot, so that's where you're getting into the interdevelopment between the characters. Do they grow closer? Are they pulled farther away? And then C plot is the character arc, the story of the character themselves, and do they progress or regress as a character throughout the story. Now, the thing about plots is that they can be the quagmire that all the other fun stuff that you're doing in your story you just get lost in, and hopefully this video will help kind of compartmentalize that a little bit. Not in a rigid way where you can't flow with it, and I'll explain that a little bit later, but where it's separated in your mind and it becomes a lot easier to work with. So plot A, it is the story, but not entirely. It's the car that you're taking the journey in, but the journey is also more than just the vehicle that you're in or the road you took to get there. It's the experiences that you had along the way. It's the friends that you laughed with. It's the people you met, and it's what you learned from that journey. Friends and laughter, B plot. Driving, A plot. Personal development, C plot. Starting to make sense there? All right, perfect. So, in Lord of the Rings, the main plot is that a group of hobbits have to go to Mount Doom to destroy the ring. That ring is the centerpiece of the Dark Lord's power, and Gandalf hopes that by destroying it, they will disperse the Dark Lord's power and help save the world. But the story is about the temptation of the ring. Everything revolves around the temptation of the ring. The ring tempts Boromir. It kind of tempts Aragorn and Gandalf. And so it's Frodo's constant battle with that temptation that really tells the story and the narrative. So you've got Frodo resisting the temptation, you've got faithful Sam at his side helping bolster him, you've got this weird relationship that they develop with Gollum, and their relationship with Gollum makes Frodo see some things about himself. He sees some mirroring images of himself within Gollum, and that bothers him. But it's also why he feels the need to bring Gollum along and rescue him. He wants to believe that Gollum can be redeemed, so that way Frodo feels like there's a way back for him as well. Now, there's a lot of other things that happen in Lord of the Rings. The fall and return of Gandalf, the betrayal of Saruman, the Battle of Helm's Deep. There's a lot of really great moments. But your A plot is the journey through those moments. The B plot is the relationship. For instance, the relationship between Gimli and Legolas. They end up developing this relationship, even though they don't really like each other to begin with. Dwarves, elves, they're like the Jets and the Sharks, man. They don't really get along. So you've got that going on. You've got the character development of Aragorn learning to accept his birthright. You've got Merry and Pippin, who make pretty large leaps in maturity throughout the course of the story. The quickest and simplest way to break down plot is as easy as A, B, C. A, B, C. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I wanted the Michael Jackson song too, but I couldn't get the rights for it for this video. Sorry. So, before we move forward, real quick review. A plot is the story, the events that transpire, the quest of the character or characters need to navigate in order to reach their goal. B plot is the relationship plot, the characters growing close together or pulling further apart. And honestly, this is usually what we engage in most in the stories, is the relationship between the characters. That's what makes it familiar and engaging for us. I go more into that in the Raising the Stakes video, talking about tethers and tethering characters together. You're welcome to watch that, and I can try to leave a link to that below. C plot is the character's personal journey. What did they learn? What did they get out of this? Are they a better or worse person than they were at the beginning? Or, if you're looking for a more gray version of your story, perhaps they're just different. And it's up to the audience to decide whether or not that's a good thing. So, A plot. There's this magical talisman dropped down in Dungeon X, guarded by a mystical dragon. Will our drunken wizard, our bipolar bard, and our druid who has severe allergies to the outdoors be able to overcome their own personal issues while defeating the poisonous dragon, retrieving the talisman, so that way the princess of the land isn't stuck as a poop-throwing gibbon for the rest of eternity? Two stories that I actually wanted to pick for delving into A plot is Age of Ultron from the Marvel series and Prisoner of Azkaban from Harry Potter. The A plot of Age of Ultron is this AI that's gone rampant. The very thing that Tony Stark has depended on all throughout his career, his technology, has suddenly turned against him. Context is also extremely important within the realm of a plot. For instance, you've got a little boy who's lost his dog, and he's wandering around trying to find the dog. That's interesting. You know, Pixar could probably do something really cool with that. But now let's make that little boy a small Jewish boy, and it's crystal knocked. So the Nazis are running around the town, kicking in doors, arresting people, stealing anything they can get their hands on. This is a much different tone for the story, and things are a lot more on edge than they might have been normally. And let's say that when he does finally find his dog, it's jumped into the car with two of the Nazis, and he's like, how do I get my dog back? So unlike in Iron Man 1 and 2, where he's using the technology as his weapon, now it's being turned against him. This also plays into Tony's character arc, where in the beginning in Iron Man 1, he decides to take on this accountability. He wants his technology to do good by people. He realizes the destruction he'd caused earlier on. He wants his work and his company and his resources to benefit humanity. Ultron is causing mayhem and destruction and hurting people. That is the antithesis of what Tony Stark wants. And so he's fighting against this force that he unleashed, but it's also extremely personal to him because it's going against the core of his being, which is to do good with the work and the technology that he's created. And now that's being undone. Basically, Tony's worst nightmare has become a reality. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter finds out that there's this escaped deranged criminal that's out to hurt him. And he's been led to believe that this person, this Sirius Black character, was responsible for the death of his parents. So now the plot is he's going to go after this guy, and his friends are worried, is Harry going to try to kill him? And maybe Harry's wondering that himself, or Harry doesn't care and he just wants to kill this guy because this is the person that took his family away. In the middle of that, you bring in Lupin, and suddenly there's this weird three-way dance because it turns out that Lupin's friends with this guy and was friends with his father. This is really important because it's engaging his core wound. The wound at the core of Harry Potter's being, the loss of his parents, and he's forced to face that again in this story. So a plot and the significance of it is very much tied to context. What does it mean to the character? That very much helps engage your B and C plots. We'll move on. B plot is the relationship plot. So the trio that I mentioned earlier, will the bipolar bard and the drunken wizard be able to deal with their own issues in order to profess their feelings for each other? That's your relationship plot. Are they going to get over their pride or their rivalry or whatever is keeping them apart? And the more, Shakespeare did it really well. You've got two people that fall in love with each other, but their houses are basically at war with one another. So how's that for some conflict? We can't even be seen in daylight together. There's a lot of other ways that you can put conflict in. Perhaps there is some sort of power disparity. If it's a romantic comedy, they usually don't like each other when they first meet, then the charms of the other characters slowly grows on them. At its core, this is the will X end up with Y plot. You can also deal with friendships, family relations, and again, you're welcome to agree or disagree, but I think it's the B plot that we really fall in love with, and the A plot is the journey we take to get there. Now, another story, going back to Marvel, is Marvel Civil War. They take a really interesting concept on that because Tony Stark and Captain America are really good friends at the beginning of this. They've been through some really difficult battles together. Now they're forced to focus on their core beliefs. What's interesting about the breakdown in Civil War is there's a lot of questioning about personal autonomy. If I'm a superpowered individual, do I get to make my own choices? Or should a higher power make those choices for me? Should I be accountable to somebody else? Half the team agrees, half the team does not. The relationship is put to the test between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, but also that is happening in part because Steve Rogers is now closely connected with Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. This also plays into one of the core wounds of Tony Stark in losing his parents, and then we find out that Bucky Barnes was the assassin. Spoilers. Fun side note, Stan Lee, creator of Marvel Comics, would use alliteration in the names of a lot of his characters. Apparently it was a mnemonic device that would help him remember the different characters that he was playing with. Bruce Banner, Betsy Braddock, Scott Summers, Sue Storm, Reed Richards, Victor Von Doom, Matt Murdock, the list goes on and on. So, Again, B plot is about the relationship between your characters. In Marvel Civil War, it's about the characters agreeing or disagreeing about the Sokovia Accords. It's a very engaging conversation about what should be the reach and limit of the power of the government. What are some definitions of personal autonomy? And what things does a given person have the right to choose? These are all pretty relevant topics in everyday society, and they were explored in a very interesting dynamic way involving superpowers. So do they get to choose who they save and when? If not, who does get to say? What is the governing body for that? Is it the United Nations? Is it NATO? Is it the United States? So again, plot A is the series of events. Plot B is the growing or separating of the characters. For instance, in True Blood, I know there's an A plot out there somewhere. There's some spooky bad thing usually happening in the background, but for the most part, it's is Suki in love with Eric or Bill this week? Stay tuned. C plot is the character arc. In the premise given earlier with the three adventurers, it could be, will the drunken wizard deal with his alcoholism? Will the bipolar bard deal with his own neurosis? And will they grow as people? Now, what's interesting about that is you can take the character arc, and that character arc can be what brings the relationship closer together or pulls it further apart because they're not able to deal with their problems or are unwilling to, or maybe they do address their problems and realize that they were all wrong for each other in the first place. It can also be a character overcoming a fear of spiders, enclosed spaces, allowing other people into their lives, finally investing in a 401k for their future. So C plot is handled when we walk through the character in their struggles. We learn to empathize with them and to see ourselves in their failings. Now, in the Harry Potter series, Harry honestly doesn't have much of an arc. He's a white knight that runs into conflict, doesn't really think about it, and just kind of rushes in headstrong from beginning to end of the series. Who does have some interesting character arcs is Neville Longbottom, who finally finds his courage to stare down an army of werewolves that are attacking a school. It's Hermione Granger learning to loosen up and, play outside of the rules a little bit because of the influences of Ron and Harry. Now, we're all really hoping that Ron and Harry pick up some of Hermione's good habits like studying, work ethic, following through on things, thinking before you do stuff. Come on, boys, get it together. Since we're bringing up Harry Potter and character arc, I definitely want to mention Snape, but I also don't want to cry this video. So I'm going to mention him, and I'm moving on. Another concept for economy is the fear that the main character has to overcome might be what finally allows them to get the talisman. It's believing in themselves, or learning to trust instinct, or overcoming some great fear or tragic flaw to gain the talisman, and they had to do that in order to get the talisman in their hand to turn the princess back from being a poop-flinging gibbon. So, in reflection, plot A is your series of events, plot B is the relationship between the characters, and plot C is the progressive or regressive arc of your character. You can get some really cathartic moments when all three of these manage to meld together. For instance, if the character overcoming some sort of tragic flaw is what allows them to finally defeat the Dark Lord, definitely use that. And then that tragic flaw might have been what kept them from connecting with their romantic counterpart. So you get all three of them that kind of mesh together in this tiny little box. The trick is to not make it seem too obvious or feel forced. So in your favorite TV shows, books, or movies, what are some ways that you have seen A, B, or C, or all three plots play together in a fun and satisfying way? Feel free to leave that in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.